There's something deeply wrong with the way modern homes feel in winter, and it's why you can have the heating on, pay the bill, and still end up shivering on the sofa like the house is quietly draining the warmth straight out of you. In the next minute, you'll understand the real reason. It's not just insulation or a better boiler, it's that comfort is a three-part game, and most modern spaces only play one part. Thermal comfort isn't only air temperature, it's also the temperature of the surfaces around you and the movement of air across your skin, which is why a room can read 20 degrees and still feel miserable if the walls and windows are cold and there's even a slight draft. Before we go any further, quick one. What's the worst offender in your place? Cold floors, icy walls, or that sneaky breeze you can never quite find? Drop it in the comments because it'll tell you exactly where you're losing the battle. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of modern homes are designed to heat volume rather than people. Open-plan layouts, higher ceilings, and fewer doors mean you're trying to warm a big shared bubble of air, and that air is constantly mixing, escaping, and being replaced, so your heating ends up doing the same work again and again. Add to that the fact that many of us heat intermittently, big blasts in the morning and evening, which warms the air quickly but leaves the fabric of the house lagging behind, so you never get that steady, settled warmth that makes you relax. And then there's the silent thief, air leakage. Even if you can't see it, tiny gaps around frames, skirting lines, loft hatches, and junctions can act like hundreds of little straws, pulling warm air out and dragging cold air in. That's why airtightness is tested with a blower door, a big fan that pressurizes or depressurizes the building to a standard pressure difference, commonly 50 pascals, to measure how much air is leaking through the envelope. In plain English, if your home leaks, you're paying to heat the outdoors, and you'll feel it as drafts, cold spots, and that constant sense that the warmth never sticks. And this is where the Victorian comparison gets interesting, because the point isn't that they had better technology, they didn't, it's that they had a better strategy for comfort. They treated heat like something you contain and aim, not something you just pump into the air and hope for the best. In the next section, we'll get specific, because the most powerful Victorian trick wasn't the fireplace itself, it was what they did around the windows and doors to stop warmth bleeding away all night, and it's still one of the cheapest comfort upgrades you can copy today. The clever thing about Victorian warmth wasn't that their houses were magically better insulated, it's that they didn't try to heat the entire building like one giant fish tank. They heated a room, then they built comfort around the person in layers, almost like turning the house into clothing. In a typical Victorian routine, you'd have doors that actually closed, rooms that could be isolated, and a clear, warm zone where life happened, the sitting room, the parlor, the dining room, while the rest of the house stayed cooler and simply wasn't treated as space that needed to feel cozy at all times. That alone is a modern mistake. We often heat space for the sake of space, rather than heat the small area where our bodies actually are. And once you stop trying to warm everything, you can start doing what Victorians did instinctively: contain, block, and aim heat. Before we go further, quick comment question. Do you keep internal doors shut in winter, or do you live in an always open layout? Because that one habit changes everything. Now, the most important Victorian layer was the window, not as a style feature, but as a heat battlefield. Cold glass doesn't just leak heat, it makes the whole room feel harsher because you lose warmth by radiation to that cold surface, even if the air temperature looks fine. So Victorians attacked windows with physical barriers, shutters, thick curtains that overlapped the frame, and soft furnishings that reduced cold downdrafts. You can copy that today with almost embarrassing simplicity. Curtains that reach the floor, fit wider than the window so they seal the edges, and ideally have a pelmet or something at the top to reduce that constant plume of cold air dropping behind the fabric. Then, if you want the heritage upgrade that actually moves the needle, you look at the window assembly itself, not necessarily replacing it, but improving it. Historic England's guidance is very clear that repairing and drought-proofing traditional sash windows, then adding secondary glazing where appropriate, can markedly improve comfort and reduce heat loss without destroying the character of the window. That's the key difference in mindset. Modern thinking jumps straight to new windows. Victorian thinking and good conservation practice starts with make what you have tight, then add a smart second layer. And it's not just the big, obvious gaps you feel on a windy day. It's the small, constant leakage that keeps a room from ever feeling settled. That's why drought-proofing is repeatedly described as one of the most cost-effective, least intrusive ways to improve comfort, especially in older buildings. But here's the twist, and it's the part most people don't expect. Once you've contained the room and tamed the windows, you suddenly notice something else doing heavy lifting in Victorian homes: the building itself. The walls, the floors, the sheer weight of materials can start to hold warmth and release it slowly, which is why some old rooms feel steady rather than spiky. In the next section, I'll explain that thermal mass idea in plain English and why a solid Victorian wall can sometimes make a house feel warmer than a modern one that heats up fast, then loses everything just as quickly. Here's the part most people get backwards. When you walk into a Victorian room and it feels steady, it's often not because the house is better insulated. It's because the building has weight, and that weight behaves like a slow battery for heat. In the next couple of minutes, you'll understand thermal mass in plain English and why some modern houses feel like they warm up fast, then go cold fast. Quick one for the comments. Does your home swing from freezing to too hot and back again within the same evening, or does it stay fairly stable once it's warmed? Because that swing is the giveaway. Traditional materials, brick, stone, plaster, dense timber, have what historic England describes as high thermal mass and high thermal inertia. They can hold heat within their thickness, and they heat up and cool down slowly. Imagine lighting a fire or running the heating for a few hours in a room with solid walls. The air warms first, yes, but then the walls, floors, and even heavy furniture begin to absorb that warmth. Later, when the heat source eases off, those surfaces quietly feed some of it back into the space, so the room doesn't collapse into cold the moment the boiler stops. That's why a heavier house can feel calmer, not necessarily warmer on paper, but less spiky, less shocking to live in. And it's also why the Victorian approach of heating a single room properly behind closed doors could work so well. You're not just warming air that disappears, you're charging the room itself. Of course, none of this is magic insulation. Thermal mass doesn't stop heat leaving, it just slows the drama. And historic England is careful to point out that traditional buildings can regulate fluctuations in temperature and humidity in ways people often underestimate. But here's the catch, and it's the reason modern homes can still feel miserable even with good materials. If the warmth is being stolen by constant air leakage, the battery never fully charges. In the next section, we'll go straight to the real comfort killer, drafts, and I'll show you the Victorian-style fixes you can copy today that make a room feel warmer almost immediately before you spend a penny on bigger heating. If you want the fastest, most Victorian way to make a home feel warmer without touching the boiler, this is it. Stop the drafts first. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why a tiny breeze can steal more comfort than a whole extra radiator can replace, and what you can do about it in a way that's simple, cheap, and doesn't ruin the look of an older home. Quick one for the comments. Have you ever felt a cold ribbon of air near a window or under a door, even when the room is technically warm? If yes, that's your smoking gun. Drafts don't just lower the temperature, they strip heat from your skin by moving air across you, and they create that miserable feeling that warmth never quite settles. This is why historic England repeatedly calls draft-proofing one of the most cost-effective and least intrusive ways to improve comfort and cut heating demand, with little or no change to a building's appearance. And it's not vague advice. Their guidance notes cite research showing draft-proofing can reduce air leakage from windows by roughly 1/3 to 1/2, which is enormous when you remember you're trying to heat a room that's quietly leaking all day. The Victorian mindset here is brutally practical. You don't add more heat until you've stopped wasting it. So you start where the air moves. Around sash windows, that might mean discreet brush seals, tightened meeting rails, repaired cords so the sashes actually close properly, and making sure the frame-to-wall junction isn't a hidden gap farm. Around doors, it's the classics: a proper threshold seal, a brush strip, and a draft excluder that actually touches the floor along the whole span, not just in the middle. Then you use fabric as a second barrier, curtains that overlap the frame and reach the floor, and, if you've got them, shutters at night. But there's one warning that matters, especially for older buildings. Draft-proofing isn't the same as sealing a house shut. The goal is to remove uncontrolled leakage, the random gaps and whistling cracks, while still allowing sensible ventilation where it's meant to happen, so you don't trade cold discomfort for damp problems. That balance is exactly why the best approach is repair, tighten, then add a smart second layer if needed, rather than ripping everything out. And here's the twist that catches people. Once you cut the drafts, you suddenly feel how warm your home can be, which is when many people make the next mistake and modernize in a way that backfires. In the next section, I'll show you the 3 common upgrades that can actually make a home feel colder or less comfortable when they're done in the wrong order. Here's the uncomfortable part. A lot of modern upgrades don't fail because the idea's bad. They fail because they're done in the wrong order, or only halfway, and the house ends up confused. In this section, you'll learn the 3 most common ways people accidentally make a home feel colder, even after spending serious money. Quick comment question: have you ever had work done and thought, it should be warmer than this? If you have, you'll recognize at least one of these. Mistake number 1 is chasing big-ticket changes while ignoring the basics, replacing a window, adding a new heating system, or opening up the layout, while the room is still leaking air through dozens of small gaps. The result is simple. You've upgraded the engine, but the fuel tank has a hole in it, so the warmth never settles. Mistake number 2 is creating cold surfaces you didn't expect, which is what happens when insulation is added inconsistently or when junctions are left untreated around window reveals, floor edges, or corners. So you reduce heat loss in one spot but concentrate the cold in another. That's when people start saying it's warmer but it feels clammy, because comfort is surfaces, not just air. Mistake number 3 is sealing without thinking about moisture and airflow, especially in older buildings. You block the random drafts, but you don't provide controlled ventilation where it's needed, and suddenly you're dealing with condensation on cold corners, musty smells, or mold creeping in behind furniture, and a damp room always feels colder, no matter what the thermostat says. The ironic thing is that Victorians understood the order instinctively. You contain the warm room, you control the leaks, you manage the cold glass effect, and only then do you worry about bigger changes, because by then you can actually feel what the house is doing. And that brings us to the practical finish, because in the next section, I'll give you the Victorian comfort plan in 3 moves, done in the right order, so you get a noticeable difference fast, without turning your home into a building site. Right, here's the Victorian comfort plan in 3 moves, done in the only order that actually works, and if you follow it, you'll feel a difference long before you spend money on anything dramatic. First, stop uncontrolled air movement, because drafts don't just lower temperature, they destroy comfort by pulling warmth off your skin and creating cold streaks that make a room feel unsettled. So, you go room by room and fix the obvious offenders: doors that don't meet the frame, gaps at thresholds, loft hatches that don't sit tight, and windows that rattle or whistle, starting with the room you use most. Second, once the room isn't bleeding air, you reduce the cold radiation effect from glazing, because cold glass makes your body lose heat even when the air is warm. That's where Victorian logic shines. Curtains that overlap the frame and reach the floor, shutters if you have them, and if you want the smarter upgrade without ripping character out, secondary glazing or a proper repair and draft-proof approach on existing sashes can transform how the room feels at night. Third, you stop trying to heat the whole house like a single open bubble and instead heat zones properly. Close internal doors, warm the room you're actually living in, and let the building's own weight work for you. Once a room has been held warm for long enough, the walls and floors begin to stabilize, and the temperature stops swinging so violently, which is why older rooms can feel calmer and more even when they're used the right way. The key is balance. You're not sealing a house shut, you're removing random leaks and then letting ventilation happen intentionally, so you keep the air fresh without letting the heat escape through 1,000 invisible cracks. If you want a simple way to check you're on the right track, use this. If the room feels warmer the moment you stop the drafts, you are losing comfort to air movement. If it still feels harsh near the windows at night, you're losing comfort to cold surfaces. And if it warms fast but drops fast, you're heating air without charging the room. And once you've got that warmth staying inside the room, you start seeing the bigger Victorian pattern. They weren't chasing gadgets, they were mastering simple, practical preservation. Which is why, in the next video, How Victorians Preserved Milk Before Refrigeration, Safely Explained, we'll break down the surprisingly safe methods they used to keep milk fresh and what still makes sense today.